Dog Pound, we have two major updates today. First, a young backup defended our starter after hearing loud stadium boos during a halftime interview against Buffalo. Second, 3 teams are eyeing this cheap backup for a trade since our Week 1 job was just claimed. I will reveal everyone shortly. Stick around, like, subscribe, and help us hit 3,000 subscribers. Shedeur Sanders publicly defended Deshaun Watson after our fans booed the quarterback during the preseason game against the Buffalo Bills on August 22, 2026. Watching that unfold at our stadium was difficult because it highlighted a raw tension sitting right in the middle of our locker room. Watson has faced immense pressure since arriving in Cleveland, and the crowd frustration finally reached a boiling point during this exhibition matchup. The part fans are not ready for is how deeply this actually impacts our roster harmony. Sanders, who is competing directly against Watson for the starting role, stepped up during his halftime interview to state he felt uncomfortable with the entire stadium booing a teammate. He insisted that we are all human beings trying to put in work, and that regardless of the competition, there is a fundamental level of respect owed to the men inside that huddle. Is this display of unity enough to cool down the tempers in the stands, or are we witnessing a fractured connection that could linger into the regular season? During the post-game press conference, Sanders doubled down on this message, emphasizing that our quarterback room must function as a single unit to succeed. I am impressed by the character he showed under that spotlight, but I also want to pump the brakes a little on expecting this to solve our offensive inconsistency. It is rare to see a younger player defend a veteran starter this vocally while they are fighting for the same snap counts on the depth chart. If the front office keeps these two together, will that defensive posturing change the way the coaching staff handles the rotations throughout the remaining weeks? We clearly need more clarity on how this chemistry affects our execution in the trenches, especially before we turn our attention toward the bigger questions surrounding our offensive identity. Why is it that our own home field feels like a hostile environment for the guys wearing our colors? It boils down to massive pressure mounting after several underwhelming seasons, and seeing that frustration boil over toward a signal caller is frankly alarming for our locker room chemistry. Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. These players hear every single whistle and jeer, and the fact that a backup like Shedeur Sanders had to step in to protect his teammate speaks volumes about the disconnect currently plaguing our sideline. I have watched plenty of training camps and preseason scraps over the years, but it is incredibly rare to witness a situation where a direct positional rival essentially scolds the home crowd for their lack of basic human decency. Does this mean our leadership structure is crumbling before the regular season even kicks off? I truly doubt it goes that far, yet I want to pump the brakes a little before we assume this unity will magically translate into production on the field. The front office and coaching staff are certainly monitoring these optics behind closed doors because they understand that a divided squad rarely wins in the trenches. If the atmosphere stays this toxic, we might see the team retreat into themselves rather than bonding under adversity. Honestly, I think the coaching staff is terrified that this negativity could bleed into the snap counts and damage the confidence of the entire quarterback room. This is real, but let's not get ahead of ourselves by thinking one player's defense of another heals a fractured relationship with the paying customers. If we cannot find a way to maintain basic respect during exhibition play, how are we supposed to survive the inevitable ups and downs of a grueling 17-game grind? We need to figure this out before the season opener. Now let's get into the update everyone has been waiting for. The Cleveland Browns officially named Deshaun Watson the starting quarterback for Week 1, which pushes Shedeur Sanders into the backup role. I know many of us held on to the hope that this summer would produce a different result, but the front office clearly decided to stick with the veteran for the time being. It creates a complex situation for a young talent like Sanders, who entered this competition with genuine aspirations of leading our offense onto the field. And I'll be straight with you. While I'm certainly disappointed to see his momentum halted, I want to pump the brakes a little before we assume he is destined for another roster. His status as a cost-effective young asset makes him an intriguing piece for squads searching for depth, even though the front office has no plans to move him right now. Does this really mean his chance to play in Cleveland is effectively finished for the season? I honestly doubt it. Think about the reality of our current situation. If Watson struggles or falters during those early snap counts, Sanders remains our best insurance policy to salvage the campaign. Some analysts are already pointing toward teams like the Detroit Lions, who need help behind their starter, or perhaps the Miami Dolphins, as logical landing spots if things shifted. Yet keeping him right here in our facility provides us with a high-ceiling alternative if our primary option fails to deliver in the trenches. It is a tough pill to swallow for those of us rooting for a fresh start, but having a capable arm ready on the bench is the smart path for any contender. Is this the right move for our long-term stability, or are we just delaying a difficult transition at the most important position on the entire field? Maintaining a young, inexpensive signal caller as insurance is a strategic maneuver that keeps our roster flexible while hedging against potential volatility at the most vital position on the field. Because he remains on our payroll, we secure depth behind the veteran starter without blowing our budget, which is a savvy move for any front office navigating current cap hit realities. What nobody is talking about is how this setup mirrors the challenges faced by teams like the Detroit Lions, who currently rely on Josh Dobbs behind their starter, or the Green Bay Packers, who are forced to carry both Tyrod Taylor and Kyle McCord to ensure stability. Even the rebuilding Miami Dolphins are currently rotating through Malik Willis and Quinn Ewers to find their footing. If our starter struggles, the pressure to pivot will mount instantly, and having that youthful energy ready to command the huddle could save our entire season. Some analysts point out that keeping him here gives him the highest probability of actually seeing snaps, as our internal environment remains highly fluid. Does this reality provide enough comfort for those of us watching the game, or are we just watching a slow-motion clock tick down on a potential trade asset? The downside is obvious. If he sits on the bench all year, his development could stall while his trade value drops. My honest take here is that keeping him in our building is the correct call, even if it feels stifling for his career progression right now. We need to protect ourselves against injury or poor performance, and frankly, I would rather see him holding the clipboard for us than flourishing in another uniform. Is this truly the path to victory, or are we simply delaying a massive decision that will eventually haunt our depth chart? When you put both of today's stories together, here is the picture that emerges for the Cleveland Browns. We are dealing with a franchise caught between a veteran starter and a backup who is suddenly showing the kind of leadership that makes people stop and take notice. This is where it gets real, because those public comments from Shedeur Sanders regarding the boos are more than just a soundbite. They reveal a deep fracture between the loyal fan base and our current personnel. Linking these events reveals a front office clinging to a specific hierarchy, while the locker room atmosphere feels incredibly volatile. Moving forward, if the coaching staff keeps forcing this arrangement, we risk losing the trust of the very supporters who keep our home stadium alive. I believe this demonstrates that our long-term direction relies on more than just snap counts and playbooks. It demands a unified identity that we currently lack. Can you justify keeping a vocal leader like Sanders on the bench if our offense fails to find a rhythm early? Furthermore, do you think those jeers from the stands will stop now that the starting lineup is set for Week 1? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below, as your perspective on this quarterback dynamic is essential for us to understand the path ahead. It is clearly a defining moment for our season trajectory. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. I am still pushing toward our first 3,000 subscribers, and every one of you helps me get there. Dog Pound, I will see you in the next one. Stay tuned as we break down these upcoming matchups and analyze the latest roster moves throughout the week. Your continued support keeps this community growing stronger every single day.